This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Hey everyone, a quick heads up at the top. This episode is about South Park, so it needs a content warning. Consider yourself warned. It's hard to describe just how popular South Park was in my school when it first aired in 1997. I was in 7th grade. New episodes came out every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. on Comedy Central, and then the next day, everybody in my class would spend the entire week whispering lines from the show over and over again, totally out of context, and making sure that the teachers couldn't hear us.
I've been watching since I was way too young. I was probably not allowed to be watching the show when it was first on air in the late 90s. I was just a grade schooler in Australia, and I don't think the show was meant for me, but I was watching.
That's Slate contributing writer David Mack.
I'm one of 3 boys, and this was the sort of epitome of my older brother's humor, and it very quickly became the epitome of our humor too, right?
The series, created by Matt Stone and Trey Parker, follows 4 young boys in a rural Colorado town. And right from the start, South Park has always pushed the boundaries of what you could get away with saying on TV. Especially in those early episodes where one of the kids, Kenny, would get brutally killed every week.
Oh my God! They killed Kenny! You bastard!
The whole point of the show seemed to be the crazier, the more vulgar, the better.
I can remember the show feeling outrageous and scandalous and naughty and juvenile in a way that was obviously very appealing as a prepubescent boy. Here was something that was beyond outrageous, and they were getting away with it.
As the show, well, I don't want to say it grew up, but as it evolved over the decades, the storytelling took on a more overtly political tone, like eviscerating the rise of 9/11 truthers.
The 9/11 conspiracy is a government conspiracy.
Oh, Jesus.
Or weighing in on the U.S.'s invasion of Iraq.
I learned something today. This country was founded by some of the smartest thinkers the world has ever seen, and they knew one thing: that a truly great country can go to war and at the same time act like it doesn't want to. You people who are for the war, you need...
This month, the show debuted its 27th season after a 2-year hiatus.
What shocked me most in these first 2 episodes, I think, is Matt Stone and Trey Parker's willingness to do something that not many people in media are doing right now, which is directly make fun of Trump in a way that they know is going to make him mad. They are not stepping back. We're seeing media organizations and universities capitulate to him, and they are not willing to do that. And that felt so refreshing and so affirming as a viewer.
If you're not plugged in, if you haven't watched these episodes, can you give some bullet points of what you're talking about? Like what was so direct and what was so offensive?
In the last decade, Trump hasn't been in the show, and now, right in the very first episode of this season, not only do we have Trump in the White House, we have photos of Trump being used to animate him. The words coming out of my mouth on a podcast, here you go, in a sexual relationship with Satan himself, and has a micro penis, and we see this penis frequently throughout the episodes. And so it's very juvenile, it's very stupid, but it's also intentionally inflammatory.
So the White House is aware of these episodes. Tell me what the reaction's been.
The White House put a statement out sort of attacking the show as irrelevant, that they didn't care, that nobody should watch this stupid thing, that the show doesn't matter. But of course, a few of them did in fact care.
Today on the show, South Park has entered the chat. Who's laughing now? I'm Rob Gunther, filling in for Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
This episode is brought to you by Wondery. Before the internet ruled society as we know it, AOL brought America online with email and instant messenger. By 2000, AOL was so powerful, it set its sights on media giant Time Warner. The deal was supposed to bring digital society into the future, but instead it became one of the messiest corporate disasters on record. So what went wrong? Was it culture clashes, the dot-com crash, or something deeper? Business Wars gives you a front row seat to the biggest moments in business and how they shape the world. Because when your flight perks disappear, your favorite restaurant chain goes bankrupt, or new tech reshapes everything overnight, there's always a deeper story behind the headlines. Follow Business Wars on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge all episodes of Business Wars, the AOL Time Warner disaster, early and ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
Swamp Notes is a podcast about U.S. politics and the economy from the Financial Times, and we start each episode with a big question. Like, what do tariffs mean for Big Pharma? And who's winning under Donald Trump? Then we get you answers.
The big takeaway is just how much risk now emanates directly from the Oval Office.
Tackle the big questions about money, power, and American politics every weekend with Swamp Notes, wherever you get your podcasts.
David, the show is the brainchild of Matt Stone and Trey Parker. What do we need to know about the two of these guys?
These guys have been around working on this show since the early 90s when they met in college. And this was started as a sort of a fun project for them, shared with friends as a little Christmas video parody. It sort of was shared online as one of the first viral videos back in the sort of early 90s, mid-90s, when the internet was really just in its infancy.
Oh dear, I've cracked me noggin. Good one, dumbass. Yeah, why not give it another go, mate? Oh, I must flee to the nurse's office. God damn, I hate that kid.
And from that, they were able to build a TV show, and it has been running since 1997. They are very attuned to the culture. They can turn these episodes around astonishingly quickly, sometimes in as little as 48 hours or less. They work very, very quickly. And they've said that that's what they like to do because it allows them to be up to date with current events. And so the show has a long history of making fun of things that are in the news that week. And they take a pretty no-holds-barred approach to everything and anything, that no one is safe from South Park's humor. And that's kind of the ethos of the show, is that, you know, everyone should consider themselves ripe for mockery here. And if there's one sort of through line of humor and a theme throughout the series, it's that people are too sensitive and that we're going to shock you. And so inherent in that, obviously, is a sort of aversion to political correctness.
Yeah, I mean, it's making me think back to some of the most famous episodes. Like I'm thinking about when Stan's family got a hybrid car, and it sort of spurred this like arms race among the townsfolk, right? Like some people got the hybrids and everybody else didn't. And then finally all the people who got hybrids, they left for San Francisco to be like, you know, in their own bubble.
Yes.
And it was just like eviscerating. It didn't, you know, it was not punching right at all.
There's always a sense of punching up, I would say. And even when they're going after PC culture, it's because they see it as something that's being pushed down on them as comedians, but also on just the average person, that you should feel this way. You shouldn't be able to say this thing that you feel. They introduced a character called PC Principal who took over the school, and he's this sort of Jim Bro who is very aggressive in his enforcement of political correctness culture.
You don't want to end up like the spokesman for Subway, do you?
Did you just use a term that excludes women from an occupation?
Okay, let's back up.
Ah! Did you just say spokesman instead of spokesperson when women are just as capable of selling sandwiches as anyone?
And in one of his early scenes, beats Eric Cartman into almost a coma for his comments. And this is, I think, this kind of ethos reflects the politics of the creators, because they have made fun of liberals, they have made fun of Republicans, but they themselves have said they probably consider themselves libertarians. There's a famous quote from them from a while back that they hate Republicans, but they really hate liberals. And so we see a lot of episodes in the last 10 years where the villains really are the people who are trying to sort of enforce a moral code, and it just, despite it being sort of that the kids themselves can't really understand why they are supposed to feel this certain way. The left, the right have all been made fun of. For many years. Michael Moore was a frequent target and was portrayed as this sort of gross suicide bombing liberal activist. Al Gore famously was portrayed as a real
just like a lunatic.
Yeah,
a crazy lunatic.
Person.
He's trying to. I mean, famously, they went after Al Gore. He got very famous for his Inconvenient Truth documentary, trying to bring to light the dangers of climate change. And they portrayed him as this guy threatening that there's a monster called Man Bear Pig right around the corner.
Why won't anybody listen to me? Man Bear Pig is in there, and we have to kill him while we all have the chance on cereal!
Mr. Gore, please, we need you to calm down. Now, what exactly...
And it's just like, it just skewers the whole idea that, like, we're going to sort of moralize the need to, like, take something seriously.
I think I still believe one of their best political parodies that they ever did was back during the 2004 election with Bush and Kerry, and the choice between, in the South Park universe, they were having a school mascot race.
Turd sandwich versus
the giant douche versus the turd sandwich, and these two.
I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to say that out loud.
I mean, I've already said enough bad things on this podcast. But yes, these two ridiculous, crass mascots, and they were sort of dividing the students of who to vote for.
Welcome to the cable access televised debate between a giant douche and a turd sandwich. We'll start with giant douche. Sir,
and obviously the sort of clear joke being that, we keep getting presented these awful choices, binary choices in American politics.
David, South Park has been covering politics from the George W. Bush administration through the Obama years. When they got to Trump, they were notably not talking directly about Trump. They didn't mention him at all. What was their strategy?
We never really heard his name. He was present, and he was present as someone else. He was present as Mr. Garrison, who was the boys' school teacher who's had a very crazy arc through the last 25 years. At one point, he was transgender, and then he transitioned back. And in 2015, to parody the election that was taking place, Mr. Garrison, who was very unhappy at the number of immigrants that were in town and felt like he was losing his culture and his country. But he wasn't upset at Mexicans. He was upset at all the Canadians who were in town. And so he sort of ran for president on this platform of taking the country back. He, over the course of a season or so, he is quite clearly trying to lose the election. He does not want to ultimately be president, and just trying to say as many provocative things as he can in order to win, and ultimately does win and gets an orange face. He's given a toupee. He's in the White House. He is there through that first administration, but does sort of shift backwards in a way that there were two seasons that were really clearly about Trump and the election, and then Garrison is still present, but is less of a sort of main featured storyline in the way that we had the election arcs. And then, it felt like the show was done with him in many ways.
Well, I mean, I think there were a lot of people out there that probably thought we were done with Trump in many ways too, but then 2024 happened and South Park was not part of that discussion at all.
That's right. They were off the air. They had a couple of specials that were about Ozempic. We've had specials about the pandemic, and these are sort of hour-long episodes. But really, they weren't really engaging with the election. And Matt and Trey gave an interview to Vanity Fair in September where they talked about just how difficult it is to make fun of elections every 4 years and say something new, and that they felt like they were in a bit of a mind scramble. So it was a bit of a relief to them to be off the air. Mm-hmm. And then Trey Parker said something which is quite ominous foreshadowing. He said, I don't know what we could possibly say more about Trump, and, you know, what more there is to say. And, of course, I think probably when he won again, it threw all their plans up in the air, and they had to sort of they really had no choice. They had to find something to say.
South Park's creators also had to find something to say because the Trump administration's actions started to hit closer to home for them. See, South Park airs on Comedy Central, which is owned by Paramount. In the weeks leading up to the most recent South Park episodes, Paramount subsidiary CBS settled a lawsuit with the Trump administration and then canceled The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Moves that were widely seen as pandering to the Trump administration in order to encourage the FTC to allow a Paramount merger to go through.
Stone and Parker had signed a deal just that week, or that very day, I believe, for a $1.5 billion streaming deal with Paramount to produce 10 new episodes a year for the next 5 years. They were going to have all the streaming rights. So this was a huge, huge deal that's finally closed. And then this deal closed, and what's the very first thing they do is absolutely eviscerate Paramount for being part of the widespread capitulation, cultural capitulation to Trump and to the MAGA movement. And they do that in a very intriguing way, using another long-running character on the show, Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Jesus has been there since like the first episode, since that first Christmas special, right?
Jesus he was part of the show before it was even on the air, yeah, and before it was even a TV series, rather. And he is now in this new universe, has been sort of placed in the schools in order to sort of bring religious guidance to the students. PC Principal is now rebranded himself as Power Christian Principal and has given up his formal wokeness because he's terrified of the consequences of wokeness in this new climate. And Jesus ultimately delivers a Sermon on the Mount. He's standing on a baseball mount in this, and the episode's title is called Sermon on the Mount, but obviously is a play on Paramount here.
I didn't want to come back and be in the school, but I had to because it was part of a lawsuit and the agreement with Paramount.
The president's suing you?
The guy can do whatever he wants now that someone backed down, okay? Eat the bread, eat the bread.
And ultimately sort of reveals himself he himself is almost being held hostage by this MAGA movement as well, and is terrified and is sort of begging the people of South Park to play along in order to avoid getting quote unquote canceled.
If someone has the power of the presidency and also has the power to sue and take bribes, then he can do anything to anyone. It's the fucking president, dude. All of you shut the fuck up or South Park is over. It's fucking over. Just stop.
And so a very sort of meta critique of the fact that if South Park doesn't play along, they're going to get canceled. And I don't think, from what we've seen so far, that Stone and Parker have any intention of doing that.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Have I got news for your ears? The spin-off of the hit CNN television program, Have I Got News for You? I am your host, Michael Ian Black. We are expanding the Have I Got News for You cinematic universe because the news doesn't stop. It just keeps newsing. And so we're trying to get this stupid podcast up for your listening enjoyment. Each week, I will discuss the latest news and chat with great guests. And Have I Got News for Your Ears releases new episodes every Wednesday, wherever you find your podcasts, and also maybe the places you don't.
Hi, it's Willa Paskin, the host of Decodering. And we have a new episode for you all about an article of faith for many Americans.
It's shocking to me that there's this idea that all Britons have bad teeth. This is not a fringe opinion.
It certainly is not.
Why don't you get your teeth fixed? I live in Britain. I don't want to stand out.
Well, British people have notoriously bad teeth, so...
But does this stereotype about British people have any validity? And if not, why do we think it does?
I was quite keen to sort of dispel that because it's a bit irritating, Americans always thinking their teeth are brilliant.
Might there be something equally strange about American teeth?
They look very, fake. Yeah. Whereas here, I've always had patients tell me, oh, don't make my dentures too white. They actually call it horse teeth.
Find out on Slate's Decoder Ring, wherever you listen to podcasts.
You know, one of the things that I think about as we have this conversation, because it's hard to hide the fact that we are fans of the show. We're sort of celebrating its current moment, but the show has not always been kind to pretty much everybody. They've been very head on with issues about race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, disabilities. There's nothing off limits. And I don't know how it always lands. Still to this day in the new episodes, they're using the F word, they're using the R word. It made me think back to this one episode years ago where they said the N word over and over again. And this was in response to the actor from Seinfeld making that viral racist rant at a stand-up comedy club. And I don't know, it's just kind of I can't imagine something like that episode even flying in today's climate. And I'm wondering, have you ever watched a South Park episode and thought, man, maybe they went a little too far?
Oh, frequently. A lot of the show's humor is designed to make you feel not just uncomfortable, but outraged. And I think that you are sort of... It's part of the dance that the show does, is sort of making you feel disgusted at things, but trying also to make you question things as well. And I wouldn't say the show has meant the same to me as it did when I was a kid.
Right.
As a result of that, as I've aged and I've grown up and I've come to sort of, like you said, there are certain things that you would just not say and do anymore. The show, I think there are things that the show probably wouldn't say and do anymore. But what's interesting though to me is the way in which just in 2 episodes, it has surged in cultural relevance again in a way that is very interesting, because I think, as you said, so much of the show was intentionally provocative that maybe in the last, decade, it wasn't as beloved because of exactly what you've said. But it's also, I think, a sign that they are directly engaging the MAGA movement in a new way that they hadn't done before. And that has obviously generated a burst of media attention, of cultural attention. It is having you and I talk about the show. Mm-hmm. It's really positioning the show, I think, to sort of occupy the same cultural space that I think SNL probably held during the first Trump administration, right? When
I was going to ask about that, because SNL during the first term, you did see a lot of the skits break through. People would talk about the political skits they did skewering Trump during the first administration. But I feel like this time around, until we got these 2 episodes of South Park, there has been a resignation. And I have not seen comedy really come to the forefront in a way that it did the first time around.
That's exactly right. That I think, if you remember back to the first administration, there was sort of the media would write up every Sunday morning what SNL did about Trump the night before, right? What Alec Baldwin was up to. There was a sense that this show was, parodying him as an idiot. And it clearly, they knew that they were getting under Trump's skin, I think. They knew that he didn't like Alec Baldwin. They knew that, I think, the show meant something to him because of its ties to New York or his sense of nostalgia, right? And that they had a position that they could use to really needle him. And then something interesting happened when SNL came back this year after the election, and it opened, the cold open was Lin-Manuel Miranda and the founding fathers getting ready to sort of rap about the Declaration of Independence, I believe, and how America will never have a king, and then it was all a freeze frame, and I believe his name is Brian Austin Green, the new guy who's playing Trump on SNL, comes out and monologues for 5 minutes and is just calling himself the king. He is the new king. And there was a real sense in watching that sketch that Trump had won. Trump, and not just the election, but the culture. That, the culture wars. I won, you lose. And this sort of earnestness that represented by Lin-Manuel Miranda and represented by, SNL, that they were going to sort of, here we go again. No, sorry, Trump, it's the Trump show now. And that was a real portent of what I think the next few months, as you said, of culture and comedy looked like, where not only were people struggling to make fun of him, people weren't making fun of him for the most part.
Yeah. I wonder if it's something about, all of these shows like SNL during the first Trump turn, they're very left-wing coded, very liberal coded, I would say. And that liberal coding was used as a tool to sort of get at, the absurdities of Trump. And in the face of that not working, again, I feel like maybe there was a backlash to liberal culture. Like you said, Trump won the culture wars. It's notable to me that South Park is attempting to go after Trump from a different direction.
I think that's very true. I think there was probably an aversion and a sort of, not only from the right or centrist, but also a huge sense of disappointment and failure from the left, and that probably put people off something like SNL. But here, obviously, South Park is not SNL. It has never been SNL. There are many different forces behind it in a way that in ways that SNL doesn't have. And I think most prominently is that Stone and Parker have proudly put themselves into this sort of libertarian position, and it sort of birthed right from the beginning in the mid 2000s. There were many sort of there were books written and stories written about quote unquote South Park Republicans, South Park conservatives, and this breed of young people that were perhaps tolerant on gay people and marijuana use, but also thought people like Michael Moore were idiots, and that they didn't really care about the left's anger at the Iraq War, and that this PC culture was kind of stupid. And for the long time, I think that's been the sort of the politics of the show, and it birthed a whole bunch of these guys.
And these episodes that came out, what's striking to me is that they defang any criticism that might come from the right. Like if you're a Trump Republican, if you're a South Park Republican, and you watch these episodes and you're mad because you feel like your worldview is under attack, I don't think you're left with anything to say, really. Like, what are you going to say? Like, this show is woke? I mean, you can't really call them snowflakes. I mean, they're sort of using the same tactics that have been used by them for the past decade or more.
That's exactly right. It's kind of turned back against them, and I think that's why the ridiculousness of the White House's statement on it felt so palpable, because it was, also you were okay with this before when it was making fun of the left, but now they're coming after you. It's suddenly the show's irrelevant. I did see J.D. Vance the other day, after he first appeared on the show, was on social media and sharing a screenshot of himself saying, "Look, I made it. I guess I've made it now." And of course, that's evidence just there that of course they do care, that they really, this has sort of needled him, and he has to sort of find a way to sort of insist publicly that I'm not owned. And he, to me, is the most clear iteration of what we were just talking about as South Park Republican, right? He's someone who was conservative before he became part of the MAGA movement, right? That he sort of saw himself as a kind of quote unquote intellectual Republican. He, didn't like the left's insistence on norms, but he certainly wasn't, a complete zealot on the MAGA side. And of course, now he's sold all that away in order for the power that he has and the shift that he's undergone in the last 10 years. And here he is, a show that, you and I can pretty much guarantee he grew up watching, or at least, it was part of the humor that he would have been exposed to. And now he's a victim himself, and he's having to insist that he doesn't care.
I'm wondering about the fact that the show is on a subscription service that, I don't know, I don't think is one of the top tier subscription services. Like, when these new shows came out, I actually read your summaries right away, and that kind of satisfied my, like, okay, I know what's going on. And it wasn't until this morning when I got like their 99 cents a month for 2 months intro pack that I watched the episodes. And they were good. I'm glad I watched them. But I guess my bigger question is, like, do you think this show still has the reach that it once had? Are people that are not South Park fans watching it? Does it matter? Is this a show only for one audience? Or is this in some sort of a bubble now where like Paramount is okay with them being made fun of as long as we're forking over money?
Never underestimate the power of capitalism, certainly. But I would say, as I was writing those two stories, that I was aware that I was probably doing this as a bit of a public service for many people who don't want to pay Paramount either because they don't want the service or they object to the company's, capitulation. But I think we have to remember that in many ways, it's not just about the episodes themselves. It's about the conversations they'll spark in the press. It's about the conversations it'll spark among your friends. Did you see that? Did you catch this moment? Have you seen how they're doing this? And also think about the fact that, social media is, for many people, most of us are watching clips of things and not full things anymore, right? You're watching things get segmented. You're watching just scenes rather than entire episodes. But in those scenes is enough for you to get a sense of the show's new version of Trump, which is really the whole point. The storyline is less important. It's the kind of what they're doing about him that is the news. And there's certainly clips of that everywhere. And they even made a sort of AI-assisted video that aired at the end of that first episode as part of a further sort of parody of the capitulation of the media to Trump, where we have to give over a certain number of hours of pro-Trump content. And they made this ad that was a parody of those ads you see at the Super Bowl for Jesus. And it was Trump wandering in the desert, stripping himself slowly naked, and then gradually, again, these words coming out of my mouth from his micro penis sort of anthropomorphized and talking about and speaking, and just absolutely horrific stuff to watch and hilarious, but so juvenile, so disgusting. But also, who else is doing this? Who could get away with this? And the only answer really is South Park.
David, this has been great. I had so many more South Park episodes I wanted to go over, but I'm glad we got to mention Man, Bear, Pig on the air. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
David Mack is a contributing writer here at Slate. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Anna Phillips, Madeline Ducharme, and Ethan Oberman. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Rob Gunther. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm at OneRobGunther. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.